You're tuned to Evergreen Media Network. I am Cindy Schwartz, and this is the Patient Partners Show. We are also a podcast on Spreaker, so look us up on that as well. Jeannie Roller and I are the host, co-hosts, hosts, whatever you want to label us. But we got involved with this healthcare issue podcast because of things that happened to us and our families in the system. We just couldn't believe it. I've said this before. Jeannie, you've said it. I think we've all said it, each of us 100 times at least, a day, if you will, on some of our worst days on how did this stuff happen. And one of the frustrating things and the many frustrating things that we came across when these things happened to us, first of all, we couldn't believe that you couldn't trust the system that we were in serious medical situations that, you needed a doctor. I did. So did you, so did your husband. So did people in my family. And you have to blindly, if you will, trust because that's what you should do. I mean, I didn't see anything different about why I shouldn't trust the doctor and the facility that I went to. And then when things went awry, seriously went awry, and there was sexual assault involved and issues like that, your hands basically were tied because the people that I went to, and I know you did too as well, Jeannie, not the same people. You were in Indiana, I'm in Florida, and we've interviewed many people around the country, California, Minneapolis, Iowa, Mississippi, Alabama, name the states, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. It's everywhere. I mean, I'm going to forget all the states.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's nationwide, worldwide. And so one of the things that I did find, and we did talk about this on a previous podcast, is that you can go to the police. You can actually go to your police. You have to look up the certain gists of what it is. Again, we're not lawyers, we're not doctors, we're not police officers, we're not anything like that, but just stories that we have heard in real life. I went to one guy's book signing that it happened to him. He wrote a book about it, and he did find out, yes, he could go to his happened in Orlando. He could go to the Orlando jurisdiction of the police, wherever this thing happened. I don't remember. And they do write up a police report. What happened in his instance, which would have been in many cases and still will be, is that the statute of limitations had run out on his case. Now Florida has a new law, and I'm going to say the wrong name, but it's like Debbie's Law or something like that. And I apologize that I don't have it off the tip of my tongue, that now a minor, if this happens to a minor, a sexual assault by someone in a position as in a doctor, as in, lawyer, as a teacher. I believe the girl that actually pushed it to begin with was sexually assaulted by one of her teachers, I want to say in high school. Though there are no statute of limitations any longer on those types of cases. So if it happened to you as a minor with somebody in that position, that strong position, then if you wake up at 45 or 70 years old and you decide you want to press charges, you still can. There's not any statute of limitations. So keep that in mind, people, that this happens. I don't want it to happen to anyone, but if it does happen to you, look up your police jurisdiction and look up your statute of limitations, because it's different in every area. And Jeannie, you're going to talk about yours. And I mean, in my situation, I can go through the same channels. Mine was in Orlando at a hospital in Orlando. I can go to the Orlando police and have them fill out the police report and have it on record. So that way, if the doctor and the staff that did this circumstance with me does it to another person, now you've got two people that this has happened to. And that's a big deal when you get to something like this, as serious as this. So you do want to follow up with things like that and make sure you're covering all your bases. And it was something that I didn't really know about. I didn't even think. Jeannie, what about you? I mean, did you even think that it was feasible to go to an actual police station and fill out a report in a medical situation?
Well, I did, but I also knew that, and we talked about this earlier, that the hospital system that we were dealing with had a bad past of, if people filed a criminal report, then for sexual assault, there usually isn't much proof, if any. Mm-hmm. And they would come after people legally then for doing that. We did all of our criminal complaint through the Attorney General's office because they handle criminal complaints. Mm-hmm. So we did it through that. So there is a record of what happened to him.
Right.
If there is others that experience that, then, we went through the Attorney General rather than the local police, because off the record, they kind of laughed and said, was she pretty?
Right. Well, so that's one or two people that are involved in that. But what I'm trying to say is it's across the board. I mean, I don't know what every state's law is. I don't know what every county's law is. But I'm just saying, keep that, if you are a person that was sexually assaulted or assaulted in a medical setting, in a medical facility, then keep that in mind, that it is an option to do. Right. Again, Jeannie and I can't tell you what all the ins and outs of everything is. But, don't feel ashamed about it. I mean, it's like a rape victim or somebody that was roofied, in a bar or anything like that. It's not anything that you did wrong. So there isn't anything to be ashamed about. And the gentleman that I met that wrote the book that actually was like 30 years later when he realized that that's what was happening to him, gave him peace of mind to be able to have it down in writing. He saw it, the police officers, the detectives and that took it seriously. They weren't laughing at him. They didn't think it was a joke. And they honestly put everything down in writing. And so now there is a record of it. And so you don't want it to happen to anyone else. Like I've said before, you said that, Jeannie, too. But there it is.
Right.
There it is.
Right. Yeah. Well, and also, Cindy, not only are sexual assaults covered by criminal charges, if you are medically assaulted, meaning if they do something to you without your consent, then that also would be something you could file a criminal charge on. That is not usually thought of as malpractice, because malpractice insurance doesn't cover intentional acts of harm as a whole. I'm not a lawyer, so you would have to verify that state to state, but generally that is how it is. So like in my husband's case, where he didn't consent and there was no signed consent form, then that is medical assault, and that can have criminal charges too.
Yeah. And there have been cases, I mean, they're not widely publicized, if you will, which maybe more often they should be. So, the listeners know that it's happening. I mean, we how many times have we heard that? How many times have we said that? Well, that doesn't happen in the medical setting. Yeah, it does. And if it happens to you, you're just numb. You're just numb that this is where you are and this is what's been happening to you. But look into it and don't think that there aren't options that you could do things like that. It's not all about malpractice. It isn't. And we did a podcast, a couple of weeks ago, that was talking about the malpractice and some of the laws here. The one we did was in Florida. But how that is dropping by the wayside, that it's even a viable option unless it's such a heinous crime, which in a lot of ways it should be. There shouldn't be frivolous, certainly malpractice suits or any kind of legal suits that are frivolous. But it just does give you an option, and does give you peace of mind with the PTSD, with the trauma, with the whole thing that you're going through, to kind of ease your way back to more kind of a normal life. I mean, if that ever happens. If you can ever get yourself to that point again where it's going to happen, because it's just horrible. It is just horrible. We've talked about it so many times. I mean, how many people that we have listening to this that have contacted us and said the same thing. It's just, and a lot of people too, Ginny, you and I talked before we went on the air a few minutes ago, that there are many, many people that are they're afraid, they're ashamed, and they have told me stories. But they won't come on a podcast and they won't go public with it because they are ashamed and they're afraid, and they just don't even know how to rationalize it, which is it's really, really sad. And it's just, wow, it just obliterates your life. It does. Right.
And, the other thing, the important thing on this, Cindy, is it is important to have that record, because you look at some of the famous cases and they didn't go after the predator at the first case. They kept getting these reports, and that's how they eventually got some of these people. Is unfortunately, in medical sexual crimes, it's generally more than one victim.
Repeat. I mean, we can list how many cases, sadly, how many, 200, whatever. I remember a case in Texas. I was talking with a guy, we only got a couple of seconds left, and he said they did have 20 women, that were assaulted by, I think it was a cardiologist, and the police officer said to me that he was sad that of what they could actually do to the doctor, and there were 25 assaulted women. It's just so sad. On that note, stay tuned to Evergreen Media.